that's a great question. So we'll have some more time to do that in the panel also. So now we're just going to have a brief talk from Sarah Moore. She's a sustainability planner with the City of Berkeley's Office of Energy and Sustainable Development. She works on implementing Berkeley's climate action plan, and this includes green buildings and the development process. So she's going to give us a little bit of insight about what the City of Berkeley is doing around this topic. So just hear from her now.
Many thanks. If you all need a stretch break, please do it. Seems like it might be a good time. I don't have slides. I'm just going to give you a brief update of what we're doing as potentially ideas for other local governments, and also as a thank you to the ones that we are gaining from. Berkeley, like many of your communities, we have ambitious greenhouse gas reduction goals. We've also got a CCA in the works, Community Choice Aggregation. A year from now, East Bay Community Energy will be online to provide electricity for homes and businesses in our county. And in our case, we also know that we've got some interest in moving homes from natural gas to electricity coming from our city council, like some of our commissions, Berkeley Energy Commission, and our Community Environmental Advisory Commission, and some staff interest too. So what we're doing so far is learning, right? And a lot of that is just reaching out to people who know more than we do and inviting them to come to Berkeley. Bearing clearly is a great partner in this effort. This worked out really well for us today, and so we are also reaching out to others, learning from other communities like Palo Alto, participating in a building decarbonization group that's headed up by NRDC, and then just talking to others. So we're facilitating the creation of a series of workshops and events in Berkeley designed to work with building professionals to build capacity and identify opportunities and barriers on things like heat pumps. One of those, so we're going to start sort of with, with building professionals, and then move broader to groups like realtors and general public. So what we've got going on, we've invited Passive House California. They're going to come speak in Berkeley on May 23rd. They'll also be in Palo Alto on the 24th. So this is really aimed at installers, contractors, building owners, and inspectors. They're going to come in with some of the vendors to talk about the different heat pump water heaters that are out there, give an opportunity to provide some education and outreach. Then in June, we've got Pacific Energy Center has agreed to do a presentation in Berkeley, a full-day seminar. Morning will concentrate on heat pump water heating, and then in the afternoon on space heating. And we're really fortunate to have even realtors in our area. The Oakland-Berkeley Association of Realtors has a climate action committee who's interested in this topic. So obviously every community has realtors. I don't know if every community has realtors interested in this, but we got it. And so on November 10th, they're going to be doing a group for realtors about renewable electrification of homes, and they're also going to be reaching out to other groups like the League of Women Voters, Sierra Club, our Home and Ecology Center, and hoping to provide a broader forum for the general community also in the fall to winter range. So in creating or sort of facilitating, bringing these things to our area, we've also learned about others that are happening. In April, there's a couple of things coming up. The Local Clean Energy Alliance in Oakland is doing just a 1-hour evening electrifying toward fossil-free homes. Also in April, the Pacific, PG&E's Pacific Energy Center is doing a workshop on heat pumps in San Francisco. And we know that Build It Green in May is having an all-day event on beyond energy efficiency. So these are the types of things that we are learning from, hoping we can help better educate our community. working to build capacity in this area. Simultaneously, we're also working on outreach and guidance materials. We are talking with our building and safety department, making sure that they are aware of the CEC's little cheat sheet, which I shared with Alice, so I think we'll be going out after the fact on things. That's why I could so quickly say that here in Climate Zone 3, the minimum energy factor is 2.75, because it's really nice to know that for a prescriptive change out, if you're going from a natural gas water heater to a heat pump water heater, that's all you have to show, right? We want to make it easy, particularly because a few years back, there was, the perception that no, you couldn't switch from natural gas to electric water heating. And so sort of getting that word out, making sure our staff internally understands, and then getting that word out to the broader public via our website are things we're working on. We also in Berkeley and other communities do similar things as larger projects, new developments are coming into our communities. We have an opportunity for them to come in and do an interdepartmental roundtable. So this draws from our police, fire, building, a variety of departments come in and give early level feedback. So I'm using that also as an opportunity to talk about heat pump, water heating, and space heating, especially. We have a lot of mixed-use multifamily developments in Berkeley. So that's been another nice way to touch. We're learning as we go. We're very appreciative to those who are further along than us. We're willing to share, and of course, we're willing to pass that along too. So that, I hope, gives you some ideas of what we're doing here, what you can do in your communities, and please do feel free to reach out. So I got a couple of my co-workers, Alice and Katie, are also here. So we are glad to share resources. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah. I think it's just helpful to hear what other local governments are, how they're breaking down all this information into actual day-to-day action. So thank you. So our last speaker before our break is Sean Armstrong. Just to give you a little background, just he's not in the Bay Area with us all the time. He is the founding principal of Redwood Energy, and it's a zero net energy residential design firm based in Arcata. Yeah. And so they've designed more than 1,000 newly constructed all-electric, 100% solar-powered houses and apartments for low-income families and seniors in California, and nearly 5,000 solar retrofitted apartments. Additionally, more than 1,000 of their apartments have removed and replaced gas appliances with electric equivalents, saving on both construction costs and long-term utility bills. He also has a special kind of New Zealand pig that they imported, which I'm very excited to hear about later. Okay, so we're going to shop.
So, I did drive down 6 hours last night. I'm a tiny bit under-rested, and I apologize for that. So, the roof here. We're standing on the roof of the nation's first all-electric, 100% solar-powered multifamily housing. It was built in 2012, 2013 up in Arcata. It's next to our co-op. It's senior housing for low-income seniors. And there's a lot of lessons that project alone has taught us. But I'm going to go into retrofits then. So quickly, my introduction. I'm Sean. My partner is Michael. He was the technical lead on the world's first cell phone system in Vienna for Motorola back in the day. He's crazy smart. And he spent, I'd rather talk about him. He's got his BS in physics and engineering, his degree career in telecommunications, then as renewable energy and fuel cell researcher at the shop lab at HSBC campus. He's been the mayor twice of Arcata now. He's been elected 3 times. And we met at CCAT, the Campus Center for Appropriate Technology, where Jeff and I also met. He's a former co-director, as am I. So when I lived in there, we had pedal-powered washing machine, pedal-powered grain grinder, pedal-powered everything. We're an international pedal-powered facility. Michael, similarly, he took his house off-grid in Mountain View in 2008, and then he moved up and We met, we're friends, this is his place now, and she's had a heat pump water heater since 2002, standard tank model, on a timer, so it turns off and on, and manages his bills that way. Old school strategy. He's got a ground source heat pump. He's kick-ass. I installed solar panels back when I was an intern installing solar around town. So my experience dates to 1985, and I started CCAT. I put in the solar array, and there's a wind turbine that I was involved with, and a lot of projects. And that's my house up there, my cute little twins on my sod roof office. When you talk to me, I'm right underneath that little sod roof, and you can see my pink house and yellow house. Okay, let's start off with what I think is important. Fundamentally, you're electrifying. First, understand the bill. There are two possible options in PG&E, SDG&E, SoCal Edison territories for people who are investor-owned utilities. One is you can have basic, quote unquote, and one is you can have the all-electric quantities. Code B versus code H in PG&E territory. Same territory, different tier. Amounts of consumption, 13.8 kilowatt hours you can use versus 16.4 in the first tier. And every tier after that is a multiplier. So having more in your first tier of consumption with a quote-unquote all-electric house means that your electricity is essentially cheaper. You always have more at a lower rate than a gas-electric house. Now, the all-electric quantities, this is code H definition. All electric quantities are applicable to service to customers with permanently installed electric heating. It's not all electric. It's electric heating. That's so that people don't freeze in the winter. They try to give everyone enough energy at a price they can afford in the winter time so that you don't have problems staying healthy and alive. So this is a investor-owned utility specific. Oh, thank you so much. Investor-owned utility specific. And there's the same language essentially in all of the rate tariffs for the investor-owned utilities. It's specific to electric space heating. It is a misnomer to call it all electric, but it's very commonly described that way. So this is what it looks like in Energy Pro. When I'm choosing, or my partners are choosing, what the baseline electric rate is. Because in TDD is a rate equivalent. Time-dependent valuation is really a glorified price per hour that's been put into a funny metric. Apologies, Energy Commission, but so we have choices of principal heating source. This is the question. It's right at the first tab, project design data. If they want to know if the principal heating source, natural gas, propane, electric, with natural gas available, I'm not really sure what that means in terms of your code for the rate that you're getting charged by PG&E. This is some policy wonkiness here. This is not the real world. But electric, no natural gas available for heating. Electric fryer, gas fryer, doesn't matter. Water heater, not water heater, doesn't matter. Cook stove, space heating.
They don't say that, but that's what they mean.
And when you say heating, that's essentially, that is the definition of heating. Otherwise it would be called domestic hot water or called other things. So that is the phrase, and it ties directly back to the rates. That's how that comes about. That's what it means. So when you choose electric, no natural gas available, you get very different results because now your rate is appropriate to how you actually build. So we've had a building official help us out with this. This is TRC cooperating with us, PG&E cooperating with us. We said this newly constructed 48 zero energy townhomes that are market rate. This project does not have gas service lines to the property, even though it is a PG&E gas territory. The building department has reviewed and approved the project's building plans, which includes the energy models that indicate no gas available and is aware of the implications of this as Title 24 Part 6 compliance. This is something we submitted to PG&E via TRC to say we get rebates with this all-electric TDD. So instead of getting nothing, we get $4,000. Huge differences in the amount of rebates and incentives that are available at every single climate zone, depending upon your TDD rate, which is specific to space heating. What this looks like, this is an all-electric home, consistently in every single one of these climate zones, with the toggle gas available versus no gas available. It does have electric space heating, always. The whole house is electric. But look what happens between one toggle and none. So compliance, not compliance. Compliance, not compliance. This This is the difference between, this is a 20 almost, this is about 17, this is about 16, so more than 30% spread in compliance margin. And it's different in every climate zone, but it's pretty consistently more than 15%, and it makes a difference in almost half the climate zones. But it's huge also what kind of rebates you get, what other things you might be able to do with the house, and still have it comply. You don't have to try so hard if you simply say electric space heating gets you the appropriate TDD schedule, which matches the real rate that you pay, and that is the accurate way to model. It is not consistently as good as that, which is why I wanted those of you who have roles as building officials or are in the city planning department, this is important to support all electric households in zero net energy, that you get the rate right. And it matters to them because the Warren-Alquist Act is supposed to help us figure out cost-effective construction strategies. That's the whole point. If you don't have the cost part of it, then you don't get the effective design strategies. You all of a sudden are trying to put gas into your house to fix this problem that you have that you don't have. If you just electric space heating, hit the toggle right, everything works fine. So, Gil, just last night, I got Palo Alto's study redone for you.
Great.
So, TRC, when they took all the different scenarios of electrification in Palo Alto, what they found is their percent compliance with natural gas available for space heating, just the toggle. They found this percentage above in 2016 code software, 7, 11, 6, 10, -6, -5, 6, 6, -6. Similarly, now it's at 30, 33, 27, 30, 15, 14, 5, 5, 1, 2, 16.8. This one here, it never complied. It was a problematic building, so this is not the issue. And that's how important it is to do a cost-effective study. Just the acknowledgement that if you have gas space heating versus electric space heating, there's a different TDD setting for that. You get huge differences. This is what you guys got, and your cost effectiveness comment that you made earlier questions is based upon this. This is the reality for all those buildings, how they actually pay for their energy, and this is what it should have been for electric space heating. So all electric construction is cheaper. This is one of our commissioners, David Hochschild. Thank you. I haven't met him, so. So he said, this is an editorial that was published a year ago, essentially, with, I think, Cal ISO, one of the regulators as well. Electrification can also reduce costs. California home builders such as City Ventures and KB Homes have begun building homes without gas lines, where gas central heating, hot water, stove are replaced by electric appliances, by avoiding the need to install gas pipelines under the streets, inside the homes. These forward-thinking builders are able to reduce the price of the home by $4,500. That is reality. I'm going to quickly show you a whole bunch of examples. He's not just talking. This is true. This is a cheaper way to build. It costs less upfront. Okay, this is the real world. You just go online and see when they see this. There's a $1,000 difference from Rheem getting a side-by-side, apples-to-apples comparison of their heat pump for $2,000 versus the exact same air conditioner, the heat pump being an air conditioner that has the heating capacity kicked into it, which costs like $100 to actually change it. If you're looking at the difference in real cost. So this compressor is a little bit more expensive than this compressor, but this gas burning box is $1,000. And it's an expensive device to add. You have to plumb it, you have to install it as a separate device. It's a new thing that had to be added. You have to put controls into it, and you have to vent it. All four of those things add cost. It's not just the $1,000 of additional upfront cost where you put in a gas furnace. It's also everything attached to it. Now, the water heater comment / in discussion, I want to give you apples to apples. So if you're putting an 80% efficient tank, which is hard to do, those are usually, as I pointed out, 67%, 71 or 0.71 is energy factor, is energy star. So if we got a 0.80 tank, $2,100. Okay, so if we're going to take that same product, we're going to stick it into an on-demand. We don't have to have the tank, and the price goes down. There's no storage. But if we go back down to this is, I think so we point out this is a more efficient quote-unquote system that puts out more energy than either of these two, which never put out as much as put in. And that's a $1,600 product. You can go out there and see this is True, if you're trying to do a high-performance gas system versus a high-performance electric system, your electric system will always be less expensive. You'll find it over and over. If you do not accurate comparisons, apples to oranges, well, yeah, then electric can be more expensive or less expensive, but you aren't really asking the right question, in my opinion. It'd be, what if there were more or less all their high-performance products? What does it look like? Ooh, something just happened. Can I get technical support? Okay. Gas venting and gas plumbing costs make gas more expensive also. Not just the product, but so this green EcoSense 36-inch vent, it's a stainless steel vent. You're going to stick that in for your tankless indoor. You have to have better venting because they put out higher temperature gas waste. And then you're going to have the little thing up on the roof. That's another one of the vents. There's flashing that goes along with it. What if you have to just vent things, even once? So a riser, a bend, and a cap. And you're looking at, they're about $500, $400, yeah, $450? No, it's $350, I'm not doing the math very well in front of you. Cost of plumbing indoor gas lines to the fixture. This is just your venting. Getting the gas to it, $250 to $800 per fixture to get the gas there in the line, in the wall. The cost of venting it back out, $270 to $850. You add those two together. It's more expensive. Just running an electrical line is something that you can do pretty simply. Running a gas line, you have to hire the most expensive tradesperson on the whole job. The plumber is the most expensive. The electrician is 1/3 less expensive per hour, and it's easier to do. So we saw this in the real world, not hypothetical, all the way back in 2012. This is a project that was done about half a year after the one that was on the roof together. This is 40 minutes down the road. It's all electric, 100% solar powered family housing. And back then, in 2012, saying we had to be 15% above the 2008 code to get affordable housing financing as a criteria. So that's why this cost change for net zero energy versus just 15% above code. It costs $3 grand more at the time for high performance pumps, $260 to make an Energy Star per residence, $10 grand for the solar after a rebate. It costs $750 less to put in a heat pump water heater than put in on-demand gas. See the savings there. $320 and more insulation, so making it zero net energy was $12,500. For the 35 residences, it was $440 grand. Now, the nature of affordable housing, take a quick detour, is that your rent and your utility bills are both regulated. So if you have a $300 total rent plus utilities, within that $300, is that $295 in rent and $5 in utilities? Or is it $220 in rent and $80 in utilities? In this scenario, because they have $5 utility bills and minimum monthly charge, we're able to get $295 in rent and $5 in utility bills, with $300 being the cap that they can pay for the combined. Affordable housing is very nice. It has built into it an estimated utility bill cost, and the fact that you can recoup investments in lower utility bills by raising rent, just dollar for dollar, and the people living in there are better off. Keep in mind that if you're low income, 2 times a year they're the most stressful. When you're buying clothing for the kids to go back to school, you're a family. You have to get medical bills covered, try to get people back to the dentist, you might need vaccine shots. But you also have your gigantic air conditioning bill in August. And then the other time of the year that really breaks your heart is Christmas time, when once again you have some of your highest utility bills and you're also buying presents. And I've been in that, and low income, that house was painted with the county loan when I was low income, the roof was on because it's low income, the solar array was because I'm low income. So I lived this experience as well as an 80% AMI or less household. This gives them no utility bills both in the summer and the winter time. They have stable, flat, and their money every month is stable and flat. It's nice that their expenses are also, as opposed to making their kids suffer or having to make really awkward choices about how to keep it going. Because these are the people who are doing a lot of difficult work for you for not much money. Another low-income project. I want to show how this works out. So this is fuel switching. Last one is new construction, just to prove out that it's cheaper to do it that way. So this is an Escondido. This is post-retrofit in the middle. You can see solar arrays in front of the pool house. You can see all the solar around there. Notice that they wasted this roof line and this and this and this. Only in this one did they put the solar up on the other side of the roof line, which is a common strategy if you're trying to add more solar or make the panels more efficient so that they take up 2/3 as much space. A lot of strategies to densify solar effectively that people might not be aware of, but if you're a solar installer, you know what you're doing. So this is a for-profit, affordable housing developer, Firm Housing. We've done a lot of projects with them. They love this fuel switching strategy. So up on top, this is the money talk. We've got 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. You can see the number of them, 36 and 19 and 1. Their electric bills are minimum monthly charge $517 to $542. Gas bills that are left over are $14, $16, and $16. So the total utility allowances are $20 essentially for all 3 apartment types. Now, when I was going through the math, I'm like, what if we done different scenarios? What they actually ended up doing was they switched out their HVAC system and their cooking. Unfortunately, there's a little thing there. For an additional $25,000 for the whole project. They were about to put in gas furnaces and air conditioners. They put 6 of them in. We said, whoa, wait a minute. What about the heat pump strategy? And they're like, well, we're kind of already going. I said, yeah, but you're also putting a solar array up. You can't solarize a gas bill. And you guys are for-profit. And you know that since you're building the solar, you're essentially getting solar for free because the rebates are so rich. For free or even profit off of installing solar themselves. So every dollar that you can't offset because it's gas is money that you can't get back in rent. If your solar is free, you want to electrify everything you physically can because that raises your rent with no actual money out of your pocket. What a deal. Yeah, like $200,000 to $500,000 per project is how good that is. It's actually for a whole afternoon looking at their portfolio, project after project after project. What would that look like if we got $5 utility allowances? So they were technically stuck on the water heater. They'd run out of budget, but they would have if they could have. So what we did do is HVAC and the cook stoves. Those were feasible and made sense for their budget and the project and such. So at the end, they got $187,000 more money out of the deal. And that's a happy owner. I mean, that's really, they get about $700,000 total that they can have in their pocket at the end of the deal. So they get another $200,000. That's their actual money. So they're highly motivated. I wanted to show you the efficiency side of this, not just how they made money. And so what we put in there, there's windows that were retrofitted in, there's the HVAC system, we did duct leakage testing, the domestic water heater, which is gas, that I pointed out. Notice the efficiency gains of putting in a 0.70 Energy Star certified gas tank, 4.3% in TDP versus 15.38 putting in the HVAC system. If your goal is your percent compliance over, which is a threshold for affordable housing, 15%, 10 to 15%, depending upon your funding, and you have to make choices about how you get to your 10 to 15%, much easier to do with your HVAC system. Obviously the windows could go in, but those are expensive by comparison, $400 to $500 per window. So cost effectively, they put in the windows because they were going to put in the windows. They put in the HVAC because it made them a good deal of money. And it's still efficient. I want you to see that. It's still doing terrific results on our improvements. Okay, this is another one. This is over in Sacramento. It's got a pool. There's 2 of those donut buildings, one and then the other. This is the systems that we walked into a couple years ago. Gas tanks, gas wall heaters, P-TAC air conditioners, and 80 amps on the panel. This is a problem. Well, and 80 amps is generous. Sometimes I'll show you like 40, even 30 amps in an apartment. So I've become expert in the products that are the smallest amperage. I have a whole handout. If you guys want an email, I'll give you every scale of like what's a 10 amp water heater, what's a 12 amp, what's a 15 amp, what's a 20. Like, that matters for retrofits because your panel size probably has to stay the same, probably. Otherwise, they're going to trigger up the stream retrofits and the transformers. So with this system, I want to see, who says replace the water heater? Just do the hands thing. Just for now. Okay, very simple. Thanks. Okay, who says the wall furnace? Okay, what do you think the wall furnace should be? Just throw it at me. What should it be? What's your recommendation? If you think a mini split, good choice. Wrong, good choice. The P-tap, what should that become? External heat pump. So you think it should be the same thing, P-tap. And then you got your 80 amp panel. So what we did, when we did our analysis, we found that we just put in a P-tap with resistance heating in it. We put in the exact same size product. There's asbestos in the walls. If we disturbed anything, the cost went through the roof and people were wearing moon suits to the retrofit. So to just be able to slip this thing out of the wall and stick in a new P-tap with an electric resistance element added to it, shut off the wall heaters, and I tried to get the heat pump water heaters put in, and they didn't know what to do because it was new for them. So it was one of those, not that it would have made them money, but the person in charge just didn't get it. So we found that an HVAC system with electric resistance heating compared to the 1960 era P-taps over here we're seeing there, we had 20% in site savings, about 16% in TDD savings. The water heater, which is now a 0.97, not a 0.80, that got us 4% in site savings and 2.1 in TDD. No cost effectiveness there at all. It was a total wash. Why did they even bother? Okay, so now I want to show you why the decision happened to put in a P-tap with the resistance heating. The construction cost of putting in the P-tap, what happened was $202,000. If we just put in a non-electric resistance heating one, we would have saved $14,400. So the incremental cost of making a heating system was $150 per unit. The cost of upgrading service to 220 volts, so to put in a second wire essentially, or to use two breakers, same wire but a slightly different service to it. So $364 to put it in a new service of sorts to it. Now, $1,500 is what it would have cost per wall heater to just replace them out. So then there's the cost of removing the wall furnace, drywall patching, texture and paint. This is all inclusive. The thing that actually happened is $200 per apartment. So they saved $785 per apartment for a total of $75,000 for the apartment complex. That's a large amount of money, not a small amount of money for a developer that has maybe a few $100,000 at the end that they hope to actually hold on to at the end of the development. So this was done because it met the threshold of more than 15% and it made them money. Not small amounts, but large amounts. And it was easy. And I just want to point out, apartment buildings don't have nearly as much heating and cooling rooms. So this isn't the same strategy you use for a single-family house unless you well insulated a single-family house. But how many people here are aware that multifamily housing has been our dominant construction since 2008 in California? Yeah. I don't even know why you guys always focus on a 2,700 square foot house, which is the minority of construction in California. It's not relevant to the majority of our work, and yet I never see an apartment complex of 800 square foot apartments being shown, because what you see, there's no HVAC load, and we don't need to do advanced walls. We need to focus on our HVAC system potentially, but there's not much heating and cooling going on anyway. And I didn't put the slide up because it's just ridiculous, but we did new construction in King City. New construction in King City, Energy Star certified. Number one load, 40% of it is domestic water heating. Number two load is plug loads. It's like 30%. Number three is cooking. Number four is lighting. Number five is the refrigerator. Number six is combined HVAC. And number seven is the dishwasher. We just went through the entire load list. That's metered. This is second by second metering. This is not breaker by breaker. It's not modeled. This is how it actually worked after a year of observation of 56 apartments.
Sean?
Yes, sir.
The question is, why did you not put a package terminal heat pump in there? Because it's not cost effective, because the heating load is too low?
Because they don't make PTHPs that are small enough to fit into that sleeve. that are wider and longer, and the not disturbing the asbestos was the most cost-effective thing. It was not even on the table. Should they involve asbestos workers? I mean, this couldn't do it. It wasn't something we could talk about. So we had to fit the sleeve.
And if you hadn't had that constraint, do you think would you have gone for it?
Yes, so we modeled it. And the difference, instead of being TDB savings of 15%, is TDB savings of 30%. We get 15% because the air conditioner was so bad that even a really crummy, minimally compliant air conditioner today is 15% better. So Bridgeville Elementary, they had propane tanks. This is out in my neighborhood. This is the Mad River right next to it. If anyone watched Simpsons, there's a Simpsons episode about how the Mad River is named. It's sort of true. So they had solar already on the roof. They had these propane 80% efficient furnaces. The solution was to put in this low temperature, I mean, it can get cold, and it still puts out 100% of the BTUs. It's got a double compressor. So it's not just doing it once, it's doing it twice. You can find these products in mini splits and significant, big ones, totally available. It was cheaper. Propane is a very expensive fuel source. It was more dependable. Sometimes they had difficulty getting propane trucks to go way out into the sticks where this is, little tangy, winding mountain roads. Weather dependent, of course, there's landslides sometimes. Their electricity was their more dependable fuel source, and it was cheaper. And this is one of the interesting things. We can check out the efficiency and say, oh, putting the ductless mini split says 11% savings in TDB, and the little fan stuff. So we get 12% out of it. But what you might not realize is that since they didn't have air conditioners, the kids were sweating during the summer, trying to take any summer classes. And so they're running the fans like crazy as an economist. They would blow air through this furnace to make some moving air into place. That's why I opened the door back there, because I'm a little stuffy. So the huge savings that they had, $63.92, was because they're using a ductless mini split to provide air conditioning. Adding air conditioning reduced their energy costs because the fan was so ineffective in running all the time. So you might think, oh no, adding air conditioning. How do kids learn? How do we learn when we're overheated? We don't. So it was important for just a school. You guys, anyone know where this is? Okay, so this has got such a cool system. 2 weeks old now, but it's got sanded heat pumps in the basement providing domestic hot water. So they're ganged up, and they're replacing this old junker, and this is not the actual photograph, this is the design strategy where you have multiple compressors and you have multiple tanks of storage, and you can plumb them in parallel or plumb them in series. There's discussions around which way actually produces the most efficiency. But what we got is put in the sand, 41% site savings. Because electricity is pricey and such, we got 18% in the TDB cost savings. The windows, which they didn't do because they're too expensive to do. Ever tried to put windows in on the 9th floor of a hotel? Imagine what that might involve. So, yeah, it's a good idea, but it's not. And going into the mechanical system was really the only choice. You couldn't touch the shell. It's just, I mean, you go to New York City, you cannot touch those shells. Those are historic buildings, every single one of them, and they're all uninsulated. There's nothing in the walls. And yet, you don't get to touch them. So working on mechanical systems and understanding what you can do by pulling out one system and putting it in radically more efficient is the appropriate approach. Let's see here. Then, I wanted you to see this. So Bright Power's from New York City, and they're totally hot to trot putting in cogen. Ooh, that's like burning war gas. And so we modeled this. This is what that would look like if we did a water heater, because cogen is essentially a water heater that produces electricity. Incidentally, dirty, nasty electricity over there. We thought it would be so cheap. Look at this. They can't even get a TDB savings of -3.5 by putting in cogen. And they kept on trying to figure out some other workaround. Like, no. If it's a dirty burn, it's a dirty burn. End of the conversation. And there isn't some workaround, there isn't some new way of looking at it. You can't put in cogen, it's a dirty burn. And I want you guys to keep that in mind, because people in San Francisco think that's a good idea, it's a crummy idea. And you can't get through it. So Deliverance Temple, this is in Richmond, and it's about 5 acres of low-income housing. You can see here that there's their wall furnaces. Here we have, that's a 40 amp breaker, that nasty thing. And this is a similar, I think that's a 50 amp, this one actually even has 30 amp breakers. So, in that challenging circumstance and on a limited budget, the solution was to get new gas wall heaters, and we have not fuel switched because we couldn't do much with the breakers, but instead we went to the central water heating systems. So we're taking out the nasty old gas burner, sticking in 2 sandwiches in the same spot. The savings, if we put in wall insulation, they're uninsulated, but almost uninsulatable as well. So that would have been great if we would have gotten 35% savings. The TDB savings for the HVAC, putting that in, we got 22% site savings with negative 25 on TDB. And this, I know, is because we don't have the space heating button set on this specific model. This is an example of what it looks like when you're going to have an argument with the jurisdiction about what should be the button that you push for space heating. Negative 25. Doesn't matter how much site savings you get. That cost of the electricity at the wrong setting crashes your model. So then we have the domestic water heating. We got 15% on site, 10%, 10.3% on savings. And that is what was done. The minimum threshold was 10% savings, and we could do it with just the water heater.
2 minutes.
Go ahead, 2 minutes, thanks. This is 324 apartments getting the exact same treatment, same owner, just like a few blocks away in Richmond. Taking out the nasty, putting in the better. We're doing this again down in this National Core Deep Fuel Switch. This is being done with our decarbonization funds, the low-income weatherization program. You shouldn't read all that. You should just know that we're doing a whole bunch of work, and it's getting paid for by the low-income weatherization program. And when they price it at $4,500 per metric ton, you can work through which ones are the most cost-effective. It's usually the water heater. And that is the one measure that consistent. Rachel confirmed. Water heaters are cost-effective to switch out all over the place from a carbon perspective. This is my last slide. So in cost effectiveness, this is from last year, except for San Bruno neighborhood. But last year in France, a woman committed suicide and blew up the entire building. Over here, someone had a gas leak, and not only blew up the entire building, but killed 7 people. It was so burnt, they were like, final victim identified. This happened in New York City. This is in East Village. This woman was replacing her nice gas stove with a nicer gas stove, and she blew up the entire building. So, San Bruno neighborhood, I don't know, you guys might be familiar with the quote-unquote death spiral of utilities in which they don't charge enough for gas in order to actually pay for maintenance of the infrastructure, so they're always chasing more gas customers to fill in their structural deficit, and therefore we're all less vulnerable to gas leaks and explosions. And that reality, which was exposed by the San Bruno neighborhood, has not gone away. There isn't some solution to that right now. If we're going to just keep on going on the gas train to help them figure out how they can charge money and make money, as opposed to how we're going to solve climate change or how we're going to just save money in our own houses, this is, I think, the tension. There isn't a scenario that gas makes sense. It's too expensive to put in. It's actually more expensive to use compared to high-performance equipment that you can get on the electric side. And the environmental consequences, let alone what does it mean to have everyone's home blow up. It's one thing when it's a house, but the cost effectiveness of putting gas in maybe should include explosions as one of the possible options.
Carbon monoxide poisoning.
And that too. I have this sort of unpleasant habit of Google searching things like gas explosions or carbon monoxide deaths. And it is a depressing thing to see a whole family dead on the floor because they were misusing the carbon monoxide producing device in their house.
So bad, they make us put a poison detector in all the homes.
Yeah, exactly. It should tell you something. When Michael comes over to my house and tests with his little carbon monoxide wand, did you guys know that the amount of CO above your gas stove, I'm the cook in the house, I make all of it. And I had him test my stove, and it's evacuation level carbon monoxide poisoning. If they were testing it in your house, you would also say, run out of the house. You're going to pass out and die. And that's what you're huffing as you cook. Yes, and then you're like, wow. So a year ago, I bought myself a 2-burner induction stove. And then I immediately gave it away to a homeless woman who's living in an abandoned church because she needed something that was 15 amps or less that she could cook with. So I didn't get to have my $100 Euro cooktop for a year, and I got it for Christmas for my wife. Yeah. This year, so now for a few months, I've been using a 2-burner induction cook stove next to my cool antique gas chamber stove with an insulated oven. I got it because I thought it was going to be efficient. And I have way less condensation in the kitchen because the humidity of natural gas, which is like 40% water when it's coming out, you just see all that water condense on the pot when you first turn it on. It's cold pot, you see like the droplets of water. So I've got way less condensation in my kitchen as I cook a lot. I cook for my whole family, and I got a bunch of like 3 kids and adults and farming turns, and we talk about farming for a while. So it's just as responsive. I make a fancy egg pancake. That's a family recipe called Swedish pancakes. With goose egg season right now, there's top of the line. And I need very controllable heat. I need to have it at a setting of 4 on the induction stove, and they come out perfect. And I don't have to look at the gas stove. It's a whole other scenario. It's just as controllable, if not more. It's safe, it's cheap, and because it's 15 amps, I can plug it into any breaker in any plug in my kitchen and run other things in the toaster and the blender because it's not actually using that much juice. So as the least cost fuel switch on cook stoves, I found that to be top notch. You can go get now an induction cook stove for $900. They're not an expensive device anymore now. They're just a normal stove you can buy from Whirlpool. Go to your Sears and pick one up. It's like $100 more than the equivalent gas stove. Suck it up. It's a really nice stove. So that is what I was going to present on.
I take it most of this was done under the 2013 standards. Do you have any experience under the new standards?
Yes. So we've been working on 2008 and 2013 and 2016. And the comparison chart I showed you, that's all 2016 code, the one that showed blue and red next to each other in the swing. So I can talk to you a lot about what the 2016 code looked like. But here's the interesting thing. You can get higher compliance with an all-electric house than you can with the best gas house. If you want to get to 50% above TDP, you do an all-electric house setting, and you get to the top of the line energy factor 3.4, HSPF 11, SEER 16 to 20 products, and it's a higher TDP. And that should mean that it's less expensive to operate. So think about that. An all-electric house now is less expensive to operate than the best gas house, 0.96 energy factor, 98% efficient AFP, all of that. And so I'm waiting for the Energy Commission to acknowledge that they're driving us into an expensive hole by encouraging gas as a standard, as opposed to acknowledging with their own software that an all-electric house is less expensive to operate. We should not be having a gas as a standard because it encourages people towards Warren Alquist Act non-compliant design. It's not cost-effective.
How do you really feel about it?
So I have a conference twice a year called the ZA Retreat. Anne was one of my inaugural speakers at it. It's coming up July 27th, 28th. It's specifically all-electric, solar-powered building type, commercial, residential, and I encourage you all to consider coming up because we just focus on that. People come all around the country, manufacturers, but we need to focus on that and not get distracted with the technology that should have been banned 20 years ago. I have a Scientific American that I bought in 1990 that talks about climate change that I have like on my bookshelf when I became an environmentalist in 8th grade. And it's global warming. In 1990, it's 2017. I've been thinking about this my entire life now, and I'm tired of any other arguments about why gas is a good idea. It's not. It's not for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. It's not anymore. And I have lots of examples that prove that out. So.
Okay, we're gonna actually save all this amazing conversation, and we're gonna give a 5-minute bathroom quick coffee break, and then we're gonna have an amazing panel where we're gonna have a lot of more questions answered. So 5 minutes.
This was great. Thank you so much. I know, but we'll see how much you like Ja, aber das ist nicht so oben, das war
Okay, everybody. We'll start to get this panel started. Thank you to a great panelists to make your way to the front, please. And everybody ready to start soon? All right, everybody. There will be time to network after the panel. We want to get this in. Thank you. Great. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to introduce Kelly Hooper with San Francisco Department of the Environment. They're working on a number of CME and electrification projects that he's going to go over briefly, and then he's also going to be the moderator for our panel right here. Alice and I will be going around with microphones, so if you have a question during the panel section, just raise your hand and we'll find you.
Thank you. Good. Good one, right? So I think we all got our adrenaline up over the morning, and I think the question was posed during the break by Chris that shouldn't I have really worn maybe a striped jersey to referee the drug match? But just want to add one more layer to load up this conversation we're going to have, which is the city perspective that's been implied so far. So San Francisco is one example. Climate change isn't hypothetical. This is now a regular picture along our waterfront. 8 inches of sea level rise translate to going from the king tide being a 100-year event that would overtop the San Francisco seawall to multiple times each winter. And a few more inches have posed risks and need and expense for some of the most expensive real estate in the Bay Area, as well as the city's wastewater infrastructure is directly under this image, a key component of it, as well as the BART tunnel. So those are 3 major pieces of infrastructure at risk. The first, just ballpark estimate of what protecting against those risks will cost started at $6 billion, and you know that is not the final number. And so, when we talk about cost effectiveness, there is it hits us in our wallet by avoiding this problem, in addition to our responsibilities to ourselves and future generations, even just on a cost basis. We have some real challenges. When we look, each of us in our communities, we generally have responsibility-driven goals that are very similar to many of the goals the state has put together. So this is PG&E handily put a wide array of the state's goals on one slide. And I think the core one that is driving some of the discussion today is we have greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, and then including interim milestones and a long-term goal to get to a minimum of 80% below 1990 by 2050. And probably that number will actually go up from 80%, and there's a debate about that, but the set of actions we need to take today, whether it's 80% or 100%, are largely identical. When we look at, yes, we have responsibility-based goals, and San Francisco has set similar goals for itself, and is not purely waiting on determining if the state is going to meet those on its own, but we're going to meet it in our own community and have a good track record of demonstrating progress ahead of the state milestones. But when we look out to 2050, we did some work with Siemens to look in some detail. What exactly do we have to do? Like, is that 80% actually going to be something where it's doable in this physical environment of San Francisco? And what actually has to change? It really boils down to buildings, of course, and transportation are the core of our operational greenhouse gas emissions. And this complicated slide partly says 3 things. It says that there's no single measure that gets us there, including just generating our way out of the problem. So efficiency is absolutely core. And the second is, it really boils down to 3 words. We need to reduce, we need to renew, we need to electrify. So the reduce is on the left. The loading order for building energy efficiency is really applicable to transport as well. We need continually more efficient transport and more carbon efficient transport and buildings, and that does depend on the buildings, envelopes and systems and controls, and that's what some of the sub-boxes refer to. Electric cars are a major contributor, but they don't get us there on their own. They're the single biggest transport measure available to us at this point, particularly shared electric vehicles. And for this analysis, what we're showing, you see a relatively modest contribution, apparently, from maximizing rooftop PV in the San Francisco context. That's partly actually is a bit of a disservice to distributed generation because this is assuming the relatively clean grid that's required by SB 350 has been provided, and then backing off from it. And so the incremental carbon reduction from adding more renewables in the grid, once the state is at its 50% level, and assuming that it maintained its non-renewable zero carbon sources at about the same level, which is a weakening assumption, that's where PV looks like a somewhat small contributor and definitely can't get us there on its own. And so the bottom line is we were not able to come up with a scenario where we get to an 80% emissions reduction by 2050 while still supplying thermal loads in buildings with natural gas. And so that's, heat pumps were the single biggest isolated measure, and that's driving a lot of interest in, first, just ensuring that we're not in the way of adopting that technology, and then advocating for the more thorough understanding that's necessary. So just that's one bit of context. Another way of looking at this, which is to take the Energy Information Administration data. This another person set this up, actually produced this graph, but I can't give them credit. And you just simply plot the EIA building natural gas consumption data for California. We do have a positive trend that natural gas consumption is declining, and the trends don't match up with our buildings providing their expected contribution to the state's greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. So this is playing out both at local level and in aggregate at the state level. So that's part of why this is a very non-abstract conversation that we're having. And what I really appreciate about the three perspectives that have been offered this morning of practicalities of education of us, local officials from Russ, the state being very conscientious in developing frameworks to support efficiency for decades now, and the need to rethink the underpinnings of some of the minutiae of that. What used to be minutiae has become critically important. And so I'd really love to tee it up with a bit more discussion, give you a chance, Chris, to respond on this particular question of the conditions where the local official has the authority to designate natural gas available, approve natural gas being available or not. And I just would add, in addition to Sean's presentation, a source where I don't feel what's communicated to the official is as clear as how you presented it is, if we look at the Residential Alternative Compliance Manual, the guidance on this is that for newly constructed buildings, natural gas is available if a service line can be connected to the site without a gas main extension, right? And so there is written regulatory guidance that isn't quite as simple as that. And then second, last there, I'll definitely second, at the same time, the commission is of course super transparent, state agency, and so the looking at the call-in, the Title 24 compliance hotline call-in records, this question came in, when can, in the last 2 months, when can natural gas be designated as not available? And the answer was unambiguously that's at the discretion of the local code official. And so I just wondered if you could explore that a little more thoroughly and how we could help clarify that across the whole Bay Area.
Okay. Is that on? I just can't tell for why. Okay. To a certain extent, yeah, that is a reflection of what's in the PUCs when they're doing rate cases and talking about availability of natural gas. There's assumptions of infrastructure costs from utilities to put a system in, and if they haven't incurred those costs, or if they are driving everyone to have to go to one source like electric because they haven't put it in there, and it's sort of the choice between electric and propane, or something of that nature. That is my understanding. But when we talk about there or not, it's not us saying we are making a determination. It would be based on that idea of has the utility put in the infrastructure to give the homeowner a choice, or by the lack of putting that infrastructure in there, is it, basically forcing the homeowner to either electrify or put in a more expensive, propane system with all the cost of that. But as far as how that is interpreted by the local building official, I do not see the Energy Commission stepping in and challenging that interpretation. That would really be more between the PUC and the utility if they have a concern with that interpretation and the underlying argument of, why that was written the way it was. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I wish I could be sort of more specific on that, but it's something that, we recognized in, that framework, we didn't get into, making a sort of a case on, our standards as to why that was checked or not checked. It was just, is it there, is it not, and using those existing definitions, which was, as you read, is it available without, basically putting in a new main to serve that area. But if there's a gas line going down the middle of the street and someone elects not to connect to it, and they want to say that there's not gas available, that is something that they'll have to sort of take up with utility if the utility wants to challenge that assumption. But it's not something that we are going to jump up and down and say, no, it's available, you have to use it. It's like, no, that's not. We want to be technology neutral to the most part. We do have, in building standards, let's say, in the Energy Commission as a whole, we have lots of groups looking at SB 350. We're looking at it as well. We're looking at existing buildings. We're doing a lot of different things, but we want to make sure that we're technology neutral to the fact that we're not putting any impediments towards electrification, but we're also not artificially penalizing any of the other technologies in the effort to force people to electrification. So right now we're just coming off of a lifetime basically of natural gas being the primary technology, having the thoughts of, okay, your electricity was either, your heating was either being done by gas on site or gas burned off site. And that was sort of the metric that was being used. So that if you were basically just putting electric on site, all you were doing was, burning the gas somewhere else. So now that electrification behind the meter storage, behind the meter PV is coming into its own, that thinking is changing. And that's what we're working on now to make sure that we capture that thinking.
So if I were to take a chance at paraphrasing, there are macro considerations, and some portion of regulation is not entirely driven by the Energy Commission itself because of those macro considerations and other agencies. I see Sean, but Russ, if I could put that to you, right? So we have two potentially different pieces of guidance, right, between the ACM, where the code official is probably not necessarily expected to be considering those macro considerations, but just what's on the page, and also what's their sphere of authority. What can you add to the discussion?
They'll always go back to the written language. That's their fallback. Pretty much for any of the codes they have to deal with. If they deviate from the language, they potentially run into trouble. They'll call the hotline. But at the hotline, if they were to come out with some other language, say in a blueprint or something like that, that they can physically point to, that would be a big help as well. So, but they will, that's their natural fallback, is to go back to the written word and say, what is that?
And so, Sean, you highlighted how there's the tariff driving this, and then there's also the ACM is a regulatory document. So what would you add?
Well, when you're an elected official, you're supposed to take an oath to defend the Constitution. When you're a certified energy examiner, you're supposed to be accurate, specifically to bills. I mean, 99% of our work is in low-income housing. So TDV which is supposed to be equivalent to predicting people's household energy burdens. The purpose behind it is cost effectiveness. If I can see that the rate that people are going to pay is specific to electric space heating, the language is there, and I can look at the software and I can see that the question that is being asked is electric space heating, I don't understand why I would go to the ACM to get guidance about whether or not the gas is in the street. As a CA, I'm trying to serve low-income households and give them the best cost-effective advice so they can have a low bill. So I see a fundamental inconsistency between what is accurate and what a gas-friendly policy, decades of it, has created in policy language that does not match the real world of rates. And it should. It needs to. Low-income households depend upon this. Thousands of them, 6,000 households now that we've worked on. This matters. And playing the gas company's game of trying to find some way to make sure that the TDB is always favoring them, even if it's not accurate, true, doesn't match utility rates. I see this now as a policy train that the Energy Commission is on. They can't figure out how to get off, even though it doesn't make sense, it's not true, it's not accurate, it doesn't serve the public. I can't figure out a reason that this makes sense. And the language that you use of not wanting to force people to electrify, conversely, what you are doing is forcing people to gas as best you can. You have in the 2016 standard no prescriptive alternative for an all-electric building. There's no guidance at all how you do that. The first time ever this year, we have no prescriptive guidance for an all-electric building. And we're constantly being held to a gas standard, which is fine. With the TDB set to electric space heating, we smoke every gas product that's out there. Pun intended, I guess. So what I heard you say doesn't make sense.
Okay, so basically, it's like what you're pointing to, and I'm sorry, it's like this is, I wasn't aware that that topic was going to come up where I was like, I probably would drag someone with me who was a specialist in the rate case stuff. But you're basically, we deal with building standards when it comes to rate case and what a utility can charge for a therm or per kilowatt hour. That's a PUC rate case function. And when it comes to
TDB is a rate.
Well, TDB is a metric that the Energy Commission adopted to try to push efficiency as much as possible. And as our RPS changes, we have to adapt our TDB. And there's a lot of, as you saw from 2016 to 2019, there are a lot of changes in TDB. And basically what we're trying to do is make sure that any of those artifacts that you're saying of when it was, if you were comparing gas, water DSA to electric resistance. We have to make sure that any of the artifacts in our thinking, in our code, is removed. And that's what we're working really hard on. That's why I say that these slides change a lot. And people like Bill Mozzie, Martha, and I are just constantly sort of doing this, running all different scenarios, running modeling, trying to figure out, okay, what is it? What is the best step forward? That said, as we've talked about before, the Energy Commission for years before I got there, since I've just been there for about a year in this role, was really focused on single family. Our goal and one of our big missions is to put a lot more focus on commercial and multifamily and really get into that space. Because as you say, if you're looking at the housing starts in 2004, before sort of the housing, it was sometimes up to 4-to-1 of single family versus multifamily. With the crash in the housing market, different preferences in millennials of what they want to deal with, where they want to spend their money, where they want to spend their time, where they want to live. We're seeing a shift for the first time we've seen, in our standards towards more of those starts being multifamily. That is a
9-year-long trend.
Yeah.
9 years now.
Well, all I can say is what I've looked at from the the stuff we've seen in the last couple of years as far as there was a lot more housing starts and it made the numbers look really good until you looked at how many were sitting, well, unsold. So we're looking at making sure that we don't, as I say, we don't want to put our thumb on the scale either way because that loses us our credibility. We basically want to look at things from as agnostic a viewpoint as possible so that we are being accurate. And that's why I invite people like you, Pierre, even CBI, solar industry, in to help educate our staff. That's why, with the housing unit like you're doing up in Woodland, Mozzie's looking, he's looking at all the data on that to sort of say, what can we learn from that? And we sometimes run into things, as you say, with the whole thing of, the gas line, is it available or not. There's certain things that we can't step into another agency's authority of, what the basis of that, availability is in their rate systems and why the utility is able to charge two different rates based on that decision. That's something that's, I can't get into, but I can question and try to make sure that we are not.
Think about it. When you push the button, propane, natural gas not available, natural gas available, those are already programmed in. Like, there's no extra work to be done. It's already options that we have. And it seems to me like the guidance language, which predates heat pump thinking, is what is holding us back. Because the software is clear. It says electric, it says gas and fuel available for heating. It's just that. And if I, as a person who's a scientist, try to say, okay, that's the question, what's the answer? Is gas available for heating? When I switched my own gas wall heater to a heat pump in 2008, the task I had to do is call up PG&E and say, I have electric space heating now. They said, really? Great. And that was the end of the phone call. And they changed my rate schedule, and that's how every single part of the new construction make sure they're on the correct rate schedule, electric space heating. And yeah, I just sort of much ado about nothing. Like,
John and Chris, sorry, I'm going to blow the whistle. Everybody in the audience has patiently been holding their questions all morning, so let's take it out. Pierre.
Hi, so this is Pierre from NRDC. I have a comment for Chris, comment and question about your response. So I appreciated what you presented this morning, showing that the seasonal load mismatch potentially between space heating and all the issues or challenges, as you put it, around doing a all-electric home. But one thing I wanted to point out, which I appreciate a lot of that is valid or needs to be looked at. But one thing is, even in the worst case scenario, if all your electricity comes from natural gas in the winter, which is not the case, even from a marginal perspective, we still have some renewable on the margin even in the winter. But even worst case scenario, if all of your electricity comes from gas, heat pump is still lower gas than an on-site gas co-compliant gas heater. Right? Lower greenhouse gases and lower natural gas use. That's the thing with these efficiency ratios that we just that Russ discussed this morning, and that's with current technology, a 3.5 energy factor, which is about 2.7 COP coefficient of performance heat pump. So just want us to think about this because, and in the reality, it's actually better. So it's, even if it's daily seasonal load mismatch, it's not as bad. It's not as good as it could be in the summer, but it's really still better than for natural gas.
Okay. Yeah, from a GHG standpoint, it's like also it's like the when that slide, if you notice the reason that we talked about challenges to code is us putting it into like an all-electric code, which is much different than individuals going out and, it's like Sean's doing, and doing these very successful electrification programs, site to site. That was just one bullet of a lot of these are sort of some contributing factors, and really it's like circuit constraints. When you're looking at large developments. So these are things that are sort of like, I don't want to say a shot across the bow, but sort of messages I'm trying to get out to people in the legislature, people with the IOUs, people with the other agencies, of building standards should not be looked at as a one-stop to fix a lot of these problems. It's like, I'm a CEQA guy, you know, after I was an archaeologist, so I look at, by the time you get down to a house, you've missed a lot of opportunities to mitigate the impacts of that development. So, you know, we have, in a CEQA analysis, you can imagine you have school fees, you have water mitigation for the water you bring on site, you have mitigation for the traffic impacts, for the sound impacts, for biocultural. And why are we not from a, you know, in this, you know, we don't have the situation right now, but from a CEQA standpoint, if you say you're going to build a large development and you're going to have an energy impact, look at that from a CEQA level and say, because you have a lot more discretion as an agency, as a local permitting agency in planning, to sort of say, okay, we want you to mitigate this, and here's your mitigation options, and electrification, you know, paying money to help upgrade the grid, the transformers, substations, whatever, to allow for that electrification, and the, you know, whether it's community solar options, other things that we're running into challenges right now, the way the community solar is run. We've had a program out for a while that no one's taken advantage of because it is set up to be more expensive than grid power by 3 to 8 cents a kilowatt hour. That's the kind of stuff that I've been trying to get people to look at and fix, and not think that we're going to fix all of this in the code. That's why I'm so, you know, sort of happy to see the stuff that Sean's doing, because these are incubator programs. These are things that get people thinking that there are solutions out there. And, you know, code is sort of saying, okay, you need to at least do this. But there are aspirational things that people are doing out there that we say, okay, you know, these are working. We can sort of take that data and we can look at it and we can start getting people in internally, externally, start thinking and moving towards these directions, so that in the 2022 code, we can start taking these really good ideas and saying, no, these are not just aspirations. These are things that people have actually started, programs that are working, and we can start incorporating these into the code because they've become available. As you pointed out, with some of these people coming in from Europe, and they're doing some really cool stuff. And my staff, we look at these, you know, awesome technologies, whether they're coming out of Europe, Australia, Japan, some places that have some, you know, real, you know, resource issues, and they've come up with some great solutions. But if we're looking at only one manufacturer that makes something, we have, you know, restrictions about putting something in the code that gives one manufacturer basically, you know, monopoly on providing, you know, that for all the houses. So it's sort of, we can look at ways of giving that, you know, significant credit in the code, so people can use that, and then it becomes more available. You get competition, and you have things that we can rely on. But it's,
I'm curious, like the reference made to there only one product. Are you maybe thinking of like the sand and carbon dioxide heat pump as an example? And the reason I raise this is because you saw that the circuit breakers are open instruction. You're right. You know, the issue of how much electric service you get. Think of what Japan has done. There's a rate schedule where if you go over 20 amps, your whole house shuts off. You can never have more than a 20 amp load going, and you pay for that rate schedule at a discounted rate, but you do literally have an alarm that shuts your whole house off if you go over it. They have been specializing in 15 amp products that are fit under their 20 amp threshold and gives you some energy to run a TV and other things. And so there's at least 2 heat pump water heaters, the Stiebel Eltron and the Sandin, that are both 15 amps. And it's really, the other products do the same thing, AO Smith and even the rest. On the space heating side, there's many products that are 15 amps. And so when I think there isn't, you can go with a 15 amp product, maybe a 10 amp product, and you can solve space heating and domestic hot water, not trigger a grid infrastructure upgrade. I think that's a bit of a false choice. And to direct us back to this, how do we electrify today? Not in 3 years or 5 years. Today the software is set up with a choice. Today there's a rate schedule that matches that TDD schedule. And the hotline has said it's up to local building officials, and it's really just your ACM that's confusing the issue, and I have to argue unhelpfully.
Most simply, it's like a building official making an interpretation of something of that nature is one thing. If we put into our code or we put into our manual something that is
Like banning gas next year.
yeah.
I'm gonna blow the whistle one more time.
Let me finish that thought really quick. We have to make sure that anything we put in our code is consistent with the regulations or state law of other agencies. So if it's in a rate case saying you can't do this, or we can't require, I couldn't require someone to put a PV system into a house that violated NEM rules or Rule 21 interconnection. That's the kind of stuff that we have to be careful with. So I will look into the whole thing of that box. And if that doesn't violate a rule from another agency, I would love to take that forward because I think it's a good idea.
Chris, thank you for that commitment. It would also help us if you let us know what that rule is. If it,
That would be something we would just deal with in a workshop so that it's, as you say, transparent so
sure.
everyone understands what we're thinking.
We have time for one more question. I would love for it to come from my code official if we have several in the room. Sir.
Yeah, as a senior building inspector and working for the town of Ross, a building official he follows the building code that our state legislature has basically passed. And those are the minimum standards that are out there for any structure or for anything that gets plan reviewed that's out there. We don't set policy that's out there. Even our towns that develop ordinances that are out there that are above and beyond the building codes that are out there, like in the town of Ross or in other jurisdictions. We enforce those rules, but we can't go ahead and say to a household, you can't have gas in your place, even though their gas may be available, or your house has to be all electric. All of that discussion happens at the time of planning. And if the architect and the homeowner at that particular point want their house to be totally zero net energy that's out there, yes, we will be happy to go ahead and see and review those plans for them, but that's their choice. We just take a look at those plans, see that they meet the minimum standards of the building code that has been presented to us, like the 2016, in all the facets of that code, including the energy code that's out there. And yes, the energy code has expanded from something small to something greater, okay? But it's like in the electrical code, where we have arc faults, which is protecting people out there. Those things they had those 4 years before they became an actual product and a mandate in the electrical code. And so the code is a constant living thing, and it generates just like the energy code.
Thank you. Is there also a question from a building official? Okay, that was a great comment, thank you. I'm just going to ask one final question, and if you could get to one sentence from each of the speakers, what would you like to see Bay Area local officials do to better support reduction in carbon emissions in the built environment? Why don't we start with you, Russ?
Can we start the other way?
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah, no, I know he has something.
Of the things that I've seen, it seems and interesting. If you're a building official, you can't see the selection of space heating is gas or not. It doesn't show up on a CF1R or any other form. It's buried in the software itself as a principal invisible choice, and you'll just see if it passes or not. So to dig into that and to make it a guidance that goes out to CEAs and to all the people who are helping out in building, to make that option visible. It's nearly invisible. It took me a long time to figure that out. And it's not easily found, so it seems like making that transparent is the biggest thing I've seen. To make a project pass code or not pass code, or be designed cost effectively or cost ineffectively with the gas system.
Thanks, John. Chris, what else could we, or possibly that?
Sorry.
Basically, it's education of people to understand the role of behavior in energy efficiency, because there's a great, ACEEE, I was down there with Sean, and they talked about a Habit of Humanity house that was built to be Z&E. And they ran it metrics over 10 years, and they found it only ran as a Z&E house for 4 out of 10 years because of behavior. Teenagers, actually. That's sort of 2-to-1 thing. But our code design is basically, as Sean says, it's like we have 21 and 27, and we sort of round off to about a 24.5 square foot house for the residential. This is all theoretical, mathematical. It's sort of assumptions of behavior. And no matter what the code looks like, people's behavior and how they use their appliances, how they use their house, how they use their cars is really where a lot of this is where we're going to be sort of made or broken when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. So that's the thing, just to make sure that people understand that we can set great codes, the locals can set great local codes, other people can go well beyond that with aspirational projects that are sort of these guiding beacons, but if people don't use them correctly, you lose a lot of the value.
So when I talk about the water heater replacements, if you go have an existing home, and with an existing home, it's very clear whether there's gas available. If you have a gas water heater or gas furnace in that, there's gas available. So, and so if you're going from a gas water heater to an electric heat pump water heater, all you have to do, it's very prescriptive, you just put in a heat pump water heater of a certain efficiency, and that's it, you're done. Now, for space heating, it's very different. If you're going from a gas furnace to a heat pump space heater, you have to hire an energy consultant to come out to the house, to measure everything about the house, create a computer simulation model of the house, and then do a before and after thing, and you may have to trade off things. You may have to add ceiling insulation or go to high efficiency or something to make up for that difference. It's not prescriptive. So, and I sit on the board of the people who do that, KBAC, California Association of Building Energy Consultants, so Misty, don't tell them I'm saying this, but I would like to see it simplified where you didn't necessarily have to hire a person to do that. It maybe still performance, but simplified performance so that there was it didn't take quite so much work to do it. I'm not asking for prescriptive, but just a simplified approach to do that.
Great. Yes,
Can I ask something just really quick? I want to comment that I think Christopher said something really important, and I want to make sure everybody in the city's heard it. And that is that you have CEQA as another tool.
CEQA is another tool. So don't just be looking at codes, but look at the other tools in your toolbox to address the emissions in built projects.
Great, thank you. It's been a fantastic discussion and appreciate your time this morning, and I'll leave the floor to Alex.
I don't think we don't need to. So can I just get a round of applause for our host? That was incredible. And also just a thank you to our Bay Run staff, Claire and Terry, for such a wonderful job. So we'll send this information out, so you'll have the contact information for all the speakers, bombarded them with emails and questions. And so this will be sent out to you. We also have already emailed you a survey link. Also, if you don't know who your codes person is for your county, you can go to our Barron Code website, you can email the codes@barron.org email, and there's lots of really incredible resources available for local government, so make sure that you're taking advantage of them. And then finally, we sent out a survey. Please give us feedback. There are 3 more of these this year, so if this was blinky for you, please let us know so we can make them better. I really appreciate you all coming out today. Here.
Will the presentations be made available?
Absolutely. They will be emailed to you as well as available on the bayrancodes.org, and it includes their recorded presentations.
And just to follow up on that survey piece, these types of topics on the borderline of CEC, PUC policy are sometimes really popular, but it's also really important that we get your feedback, because if these are things that you want to hear more about, my name is Chris, I work closely with Edgar, the whole team, but it's really important to be able to demonstrate that this is a topic that local officials, local building professionals want to hear more about. So if you could complete that survey, that would be really helpful. So, thank you.
Yeah, help us out. I think that's all we have today. Thank you all so much. I know we went a little bit over into lunchtime, but have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all so much for coming. And we hope to see you at the next one.